Welcome to the Heart of Racing. I'm Neil Breen. I'm here with my co-host Will Freedman. How are you, Will?
Very well, very well. Another special guest. He's one of Sydney's leading trainers.
Yeah.
Very, very funny man. Comes from a big racing family, but very humble. But he's Bjorn Baker. Thanks for joining us, Bjorn.
Thanks, Will. It's a nice introduction.
Well, it's not often that I introduce a fellow competitor, but you're a good guy.
Oh, we'll take that. We're all frenemies in the trainer's hut, aren't we? Friends 1 minute, enemies the next, and you got to have a bit of fun while you do it. So, you get to know some trainers better than others. It's funny, in Sydney, I know Will pretty well, but there's one or two others that I've hardly had a conversation with, and I've been here.
If we go back a step, so just so the viewers can get a little bit more understanding of your upbringing, sort of tell us how you got into racing and what brought you over from New Zealand to Sydney.
Well, I was, my father's a trainer, Murray Baker, retired now, good trainer, won 5 Australian derbies. When I was a kid, he's a bit more of a battler though. We grew up in a small town called Woodville, which is about 2 hours north of Wellington. When you grow up in Woodville, there's no such thing as homesickness. You're happy to escape. And I went to Otago Uni, did pharmacy, and then I moved to Sydney and was a locum sort of pharmacist, a community pharmacist. My first proper job was at Balmain. I thought it was out west because it was over the Anzac Bridge. And then I went to Europe, and now I train at Warwick Farm. And I've been in Sydney about 12 years. Love Australia, best city in the world, and I think it's the best racing in the world week in, week out. It's competitive and it's been very good to me.
Bjorn, this is a famous part of your story that you come from such unbelievable racing stock, but you went off to be a pharmacist. Did you do it in a full belief you were going to be a pharmacist for life, or did you always think, I think I'll burn this one day and become a horse trainer because that's my true love?
Well, I went to school in Palmerston North, which is about 2 hours north of Wellington, and it was actually the vet school there. And my sister became a vet, but I was just desperate to get away. So I went down to Otago, and it was a great 4 years of my life. It was good fun. And then sort of went back to Palmerston North as a pharmacist for a year or two before going to Sydney. And I was always into the racing, but it's very hard in New Zealand. It was particularly hard there. And right about that time where I went to university, my father actually moved from Woodville up to Cambridge, and that was a very good move for him and was really a life changer in terms of his career. And then I came over to Australia and Sydney in 2011 with 2 slow horses. I think my father said one was an equine pedestrian and the other one was a bleeder. And he also said that the best thing for our relationship at that stage was the Tasman Sea after being in partnership for 3 years. So it's worked out actually really well, but we're still great mates. He's retired now. He gives me a lot of unsolicited advice, that's for sure.
So you came over the tours. You had 2 boxes at Warwick Farm. How can a trainer operate with 2 boxes? Like, what did you do?
Well, it was pretty tough originally, and I think at the time I was keen to stay in partnership with my father because we had Lion Tamer at the moment who just won the VRC Derby.
Yeah.
And he was out for the autumn because he got a wound that wouldn't heal. So I was desperately keen to try and cash in on that. And he said, son, if you go, you're on your own. And at the time, I was pretty put out because I'd worked. I thought I'd had a really positive impact in the time I was in partnership with him in New Zealand. He said, but you've got to kill your own. And as it was, I think it was probably the best advice ever because I came over, I had a young family, and really I had to make it work. And when you're starving and you're working hard, you've got to make cold calls, you've got to ring people. And after a few years, we had totally separate databases and totally separate ownership groups, maybe a little bit of crossover. But I think as much as anything, being tough at the time really paid dividends and toughened me up. I remember going to Sir Patrick Hogan prior to coming over and saying, Sir Patrick, I'd love to get your colours in the stable. He said, well, you're mad. It's the hardest place in the world, Sydney. You're no chance and I won't be giving you a horse and you should stay with your father for longer. So that was a bit of an eye opener prior to coming over. Thankfully, I ended up getting the great colours in the stable, but that's like a god of New Zealand racing saying, "Son, you're up against it big time."
That's some serious tough love you copped. That's heavy.
In a roundabout way, I think it was the best thing that ever happened, and really it was either have a crack and have a proper go, or you're sort of out the back door. And there's no, I think any professional sport is probably really, really tough. It's results based. You've got to be aggressive, and at times, one thing I've learnt, and Will probably knows this pretty well, you can't be friends with everyone. Friend of everyone is a friend of no one, and you've got to go out, you've got to be aggressive. Unfortunately, you've got to upset a few people in the process. And even Will's uncle, Lee Freedman, he's a great mate with my father, and he said, you've just got to go out, you've got to be aggressive, you've got to catch them all, and you've got to make sure you get as many horses and owners as you can. And I think that probably helped. It was tough going early days.
But if you fast forward 12 years, can you believe this roll call? You've got 92 boxes, I think I read at last count. Bonnie O'Reilly.
Only got 40 in work, Neil. 40 in
please.
work. You've got to handle the truth carelessly.
You've got 40 walker spots.
Some of these trainers, they've got 4 figures in work. They tell you they got 25.
You went to school, you know how to count. There's more than 40 there.
Okay, whatever it is, you've got a lot of horses, but you've had Bonnie O'Reilly, Champagne Cuddles, Unencumbered, Winning Rupert, Music Magnate, Samadoubt, Overpass, it wins the Quokka. It's going to run in its second Everest. You had a second runner in the Everest last year. If you heard that 12 years ago when Patrick Hogan's giving you a backhander on the way out and your dad's giving you tough love, can you believe what you've done in 12 years?
Oh, it's been great, and time goes so quick. You miss Lion Tamer, We Can Say It Now, Shades of Rose, and a few other good ones along the way. You know, I was very influential in Dundee too. I just never got the money or the credit, but it's been great. It really has. But yeah, I must say, with the way racing is, and Will understands this, you never can take it for granted. It's extremely competitive. And even at the moment, I'm having an okay run, but you've got to keep pushing forward. You can't look back. And it is very competitive, Sydney racing. I think one of the things my father still says to me is, you've got to get McDonald on, you've got to get Nash on, you've got to get, I said, the hardest part's getting them on, trying to ring up the agent and saying, hey, we've got a horse and we think it goes good, and getting Guesty to actually confirm you've won the lottery. You know you're a big chance when they do, and it's very hard to get the good riders locked in to start with, and a fair bit of manipulation in terms of the jockeys, and trainers will take any advantage they can get.
Yeah, it's funny. Bjorn, when I first started training on my own and I went to Scone, Bjorn didn't actually say it to me. He said it to my father at the time, but he said, Will should go do it on his own, because it doesn't matter how long you're an assistant trainer for, you're still going to stuff it up when you start. And he was right. He was right. He said, hopefully you just don't stuff it up for the wrong people when you get started. So, you know, I have a lot to thank for Bjorn. He's like, it comes from a similar sort of family background that I came from, and certainly going out on my own to begin with was, you know, he's probably one of the few people at the time that said it's a good idea. Most people will tell you it's a bad idea. And then I remember when Richard came back to do a bit of pre-training, Bjorn sent Bonnie O'Reilly to Richard to he won't remember, but Bonnie O'Reilly to pre-train, and it was tiny. It looked like a pit pony.
You should have seen it after Richard finished with it. It's not
but anyway, I said to Richard at the time, I said, this thing won't win a race. No, I was green as I had no idea what I was talking about. I said, this thing won't win a race. And he said, I bet you it does. Anyway, goes on to win, you know, Group 2's one of the most, maybe become one of the most influential horses at stud as well. So it's, you know, Bjorn's got a huge rap sheet, but one thing Bjorn does better than anyone I've ever known is you walk into his stable, and he'll tell us, but it is a well-oiled, slick machine. There's no scent. There's no scent that isn't
being properly spent.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
what Will told me, Bjorn. He said that you run an unbelievably good, slick, lean operation.
Oh, that's geez. Well, I wasn't going to pay you that much to give me a good. It is no. I guess there's some things that have actually held me in good stead, which you don't realise. But one thing when I went back to Cambridge with the old man, I really wanted to sharpen the place up, and I guess coming from a pharmacy background in retail too, your stables is really your shop front window. You've got to make it tidy. And I like everything clean and efficient. I found as I worked around, it was a lot easier to concentrate and get everything tight when everything is clean, neat, and tidy. And things have worked out well. But just back to what Will said, I think anybody can train a good horse. I think they're the easiest ones, but a lot of the ordinary horses you're trying to win races for, that's where you can really learn. And I'm sure that will hold well in good stead. And it is even going out and trying to win country races and place horses where they can be competitive. And I think I've had great results out of that. Horses travelling away, toughening up, and trying to pick the time when they're ready to go to the city rather than putting them in the city when they're not ready and just exposing them and everyone's disappointed. And I'm yet to ever meet a disappointed winning owner. Let me know, Will, if you've found any. But
I've got a couple. But we listed the rap sheet, right? Which horse of them sticks out most to you now, today?
Oh, I'll even go back one step further. So when I was at Otago, well, I just moved to Sydney, and I was a pharmacist here, and I backed a horse called Prize Gem, and I had a decent fixed odds bet in the Brisbane Cup, and it was actually Michael Rodd's first Group 1 winner. And she won the Brisbane Cup, and I got 50 to 1, and I essentially paid off my student loan with that money. And then as I went back to New Zealand, the first foal she had was a horse called Nom de Jeu by Monsieur.
Oh.
And he was the first horse I ever took to Australia. And so he was a bit disappointing in the New Zealand Derby. He ran 4th. And the next day he had a temperature, and we just thought he wasn't quite right. So he came over to Australia. Jeff Lloyd was riding him in track work, and we're going to run him in the Tulloch. He said, no, just run him in the Derby. He'll win. And, of course, he won at 40 to 1. Jeff rode him. And as much as anything, even prior to coming to Australia, that probably gave me some belief that we can come over here and compete. And, coming to Sydney, it sort of made it viable. And then when I got here, one of the first yearlings I was lucky enough to buy was Unencumbered, who of course won the Magic Millions and was probably able to get a little bit of carry on in terms of going to the Magic Millions every year, and being able to buy horses and maybe get a few of them sold. It's a hard gig. So those are sort of two early horses that definitely had an impact, and sort of one followed into the other.
It's well known that you loved Unencumbered because he'd done so much for you, but you're talking there about going to a Magic Million sale, picking a horse, it all comes off him. Will did it himself with Fashion Legend, and it came off for him in the 3-year-old Magic Million. But the sales aren't getting any easier, Bjorn. You're going there now. Ma and Eustace, they got, 200 yearlings? Everyone's there. Yulong spending up big. They're tough. You can come away from those sales I don't know how you withstand the pressure, you guys.
Yeah, it's tough going, and it's got very competitive, and as much as anything, it's actually just turned into one big marketing beast: sell, 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 sell. And I think at times you've just got to look at yourself and worry about your own horses and really try and do a good job with what you've got.
But if you don't get new ones, where are you in a year or two?
Yeah, and you've got to keep trying to get them, and it's important to try and get the clients, and with that comes results. So you've got to keep producing results. But I always like to go there and try and think we're going to get a bit of value. In some ways, it's got harder. But then you get the right horse, like even at the moment, a horse like Derby aboard Osmosis, very well bred, exciting horse. And then that's where the value can really come if you do hit the jackpot with a potential stallion or get black type with a well-bred filly. So, yeah, it's tough going. It's tough going in the sales every year and arming up and trying to get the clients behind you. But we'll keep attacking. And the thing is, even now, the prize money's unbelievable.
You talk about the marketing beast that the sales have become, and there's no doubt about it. And what happens when you're there and you're trying to buy horses, the prices disarm you. It was like when I was trying to buy Taylor Swift tickets for my daughter. After 7.5 hours on the computer, when I hit the jackpot, I bought 4 tickets for $2,400 at $600 a pop. And I was double air punching, thinking I got a good deal. You know what I mean? I've been robbed of my senses, Bjorn. The same thing can happen at a horse sale.
Yeah, it can. But I guess the one thing too, and it comes back to Australia, and probably the reason I'm here training horses is the prize money is so good and the upside. And even the Magic Millions next year, the 2 and 3 year old races are now worth $3 million. We've got the Spring Carnival in Sydney. We're so lucky to be here. And I guess with the increased prize money comes increased competition and comes increased, and the buy-in obviously gets higher. So from that point of view, you've sort of got to be in to win, and we're lucky you can get the returns, and even winning these super maidens now. So there's big returns if you do get it right, and it's I think one place in the world where if you do manage your bloodstock investment well, you can get a really good return and make money out of it. As well as that, something that I've always done a lot of is selling a lot of horses to Hong Kong. That's been very lucrative for myself and my father, and that's coming back probably to New Zealand. We sell everything, and sometimes we throw in the head collar occasionally to leave.
No, you don't.
But even now, like when you've got a promising horse, it's probably not as appealing selling to Hong Kong as it's been previously with the prize money. So now you're sort of weighing up, well, we've got a pretty handy Saturday horse. We've got options like the big dance. You've got sales races. And yeah, so we are very, very lucky and fortunate. And I guess the bloodstock industry is flying.
I reckon you'd ask most trainers.
Yeah.
And a lot of their best buys weren't the horses that cost $500,000. They weren't the horse that cost $700,000. I'd say, Bjorn, you'd probably be able to think of 1 or 2 horses that you bought for less than $100,000 that were super, like in terms of return, were far greater than any of these higher priced.
Well, Red Zell was a schnitzel that was $130,000.
Yeah, like I'd imagine
won 2 Everest.
Yeah. Bjorn, I'm sure you could rattle off some that you just go, that was the buy the best buy.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've got 2 that I can rattle off that were very good. Music Magnate, I think he cost $42,000 in New Zealand, and at the time I'd had a good ridden tycoon I'd just sold to Hong Kong, and Jerry Harvey bred him. I went up to Jerry. This is true. After the sales, I said, Jerry, I was going to ask you to stay in this horse, but it's so cheap. I feel like I'm giving away money, so I'm going to keep them for myself and my clients. And then actually winning Rupert, he was 67.5, and
wow.
He won $1 million. But as the ridden tycoons, they just, because of those horses like those 2, they became a lot more expensive in the following years. So you can be a victim of your own success at times too.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Bjorn, because trainers deal with horses every day in the training. And there are a lot of people in racing now that come in for the sales and like good bloodstock agents. But I think Richard and Michael and Anthony and Lee all together, they had huge success out of first season stallions that were not on the radar, just buying types. So situations like what Bjorn's saying happens all the time for trainers, because often they're going at the sale and looking at the type of horse they want to train. They're not just looking at the pedigree page. Usually they're looking at the pedigree page and then seeing how much they're going to pay for it, rather than the other way where some are looking at the pedigree page to figure out what they want to buy. So not uncommon for what Bjorn's saying happens for trainers all the time.
Well, I see the commentary after the sales and someone, it was an astute purchase, this bloodstock agent picked it. I go, it was by Schnitzel out of a 3-time Group 1 winner. I could have picked that. It's just that I didn't have 2.5.
There are plenty of slow ones.
Yeah, there are too. And, I think will be the same. We've probably all been underbidders on some pretty handy horses. And you can't look back. You've got to look forward. And I guess even you come and you look around the stable, and Will would be familiar with this. And my father's got a great saying, there's only one rule with horses. There are no rules. Some of them are short, fat, skinny, all different colours, long, and that they can, and it doesn't necessarily, they can come from anywhere. And as much as now we're doing the heart rates and there's genetic testing and everything, you're never going to quite be able to bottle that will to win. So everybody that's got a horse, you've got a chance. And that's one thing about Australian racing, the underdogs always seem to have a crack.
We've had some mail in earlier today from one Jim Clark that said you refer to yourself as the fittest trainer in Sydney, and the CrossFit King, is it?
Well, that's about 4 or 5 years out of date. But I did. So, I funnily enough, the world record was broken at the Berlin Marathon this week. So my true athletic claim to fame was in the 2007 Berlin Marathon. Haile Gebrselassie, one of the greatest runners of all time, broke the world record. He ran 2 hours and 4 minutes.
Yeah,
and I was only 2 minutes behind after the first K. And I ran to 3:29.
3:29 for a marathon's good
bad.
going.
That's not bad.
It's good going. Hard yakka. Absolutely hard yakka. Well, this is a show that's going out on the internet. Like, you've never been able to live down your internet claim to fame, your 15 seconds of fame with the famous basketball shot of 2017 where one of the kids rolled in some ball and you ended up flat on your back. Have you ever been able to live that down, Bjorn? I've got to say, it gave people hours of fun.
Well, I gave my fellow trainers more than hours of fun. Has it been a decade yet? Decades of
6
fun.
years.
What you sort of say, I've had 2 athletic claims to fame, the 2007 Berlin Marathon and the time I saw the obstacle out of the corner of my eye and managed to put it away. But a lot of people don't realise that was a supersized exercise ball.
Yeah.
So it was like over a metre high. And it was a full-size basketball ring. So I think I didn't quite get the accolades I deserve.
For how high you jumped. You might mean can't jump, they say, but you were able to jump high that day. But Bjorn, and the fact that you can laugh about it, that's what people say about you and training for them, even your own website, Can you find a trainer who loves it as much as you do? And the fun is a real key element of it for you, that, on your own website, professional yet fun style. Like, if you don't have fun, what are you doing, right?
Yeah, exactly. And no, I do enjoy it. I'm lucky I do what I love. And whenever you get a winner, there's no buzz that competes. So no, I tend to carry my heart on my sleeve and live it as it is. And no, you enjoy it. It's not always fun, as will tell you. And getting up at after a hard weekend or disappointing weekend, getting up at 3 a.m. to go to Warwick Farm Penitentiary can be tough going.
You are an Olympic celebrator, and for a guy that has a lot of wins a year, you keep it up pretty much across the years. So, you'd be pretty much gold class at celebrating.
My father did say, he said, I had a good look into the pedigree. I've gone right back. I don't know where he gets it from. He's the absolute opposite. He doesn't get carried away. You're flat getting a smile out of him.
But it is that competitive in Sydney. It's a relief winning races. So,
yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you win at Mudgee, you win at Randwick. It's, as Bjorn said, the owners are just as happy everywhere you go. But it's like you used to take bad horses out to these places and they'd just win if they were educated. Now it's so competitive across the board. They've got to be low-level flying to win anywhere.
Well, you see the names of trainers in for the Saturday races at Kembla and Newcastle. It's hard everywhere, right?
Very competitive, and I think Will's right. I used to take out fairly limited horses, and they'd be very competitive out wide. But with money and with the highway races, it's definitely got more competitive everywhere. And I think it's just the level of depth in Australian racing. And you've got to have a good horse to compete on Saturday and in Sydney in particular, Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth, wherever you are. But it's tough racing, and as much as anything, it is a bit of a relief when you get one on the board, and it's competitive, that's for sure.
Yeah, I've heard you on Sunday morning radio where they have the postscripts of the day before, and I remember one day I think Ray Thomas, the famous Sydney journo, said to Bjorn, "Oh, thanks so much for your time this morning," and Bjorn said, "Anytime you're ringing me on Sunday's a good day." They don't ring the losing trainers on Sunday.
Exactly. So no, it's good. It's good to be involved. That's a part of it too, and we always try and be straight up with our tips. I'm a little bit more straight up than Will there most of the time. Eh? You keep a few hidden away, Will.
Actually, he hid one. He has hidden a couple since we started this show.
You know how ridiculous that is, hearing that from a Kiwi, telling them about keeping cards close to their chest. I think they teach it in the curriculum in New Zealand.
They do. They brought horses over here for years and gone crunch, particularly that Queensland Carnival. I saw it for years and years firsthand when I lived up there. Obviously, this is the busiest time of year, Bjorn. Everyone wants to know, the Everest, all of the big races. You've got Overpass in the Everest. What would it mean for you?
Well, it's a pretty good result, just having a run, to be honest.
You can have a holiday.
Last year, and it worked out very well, but it's really turned into an iconic race in Sydney. So just having a runner is fantastic. I think Overpass has got, he's 5. He's at the peak of his powers. He had a great autumn, only the 2 runs. At this stage, he's the only leader in the race, and we'll make it a truly run race. But last year, he was beaten, I think, 2.8 lengths. I've got no doubt he's improved at least a couple of lengths, and probably the race is looking to set up slightly better for him this year. So I think he's a live hope. I'm going in confident. I think the 4 weeks between runs is ideal, and with the ATC, obviously very important part of our day-to-day lives, Will, and Ram Racing from Perth, and they'll definitely add something. And of course, they had the Quokka slot over there. So no, it'll be the team back together, Derby Racing, Ram Racing, and with the ATC. So it'll be a great experience just being involved, and even to think about being in the finish is fairly exciting.
Yeah, so what's going on there? So Ram Racing were the slot holders that chose Overpass for the Quokka and won that big race in West Australia last December, and they've gone in with the ATC for this slot and chosen Overpass.
Just another dynamic of the race,
it would go off. It would go. I've heard Bjorn say it took him a month to recover from the celebrations from the Quokka.
I would think that the Ram boys might rival Bjorn in the celebration stakes.
Really?
I think they might be, but yeah, they'll definitely add something to the race day though. They all wear their cowboy hats. I don't know. And
will you wear one? I think you'd look good in one.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, if we're in the finish, I'll be wearing one.
What about with your trademark scarf as well? Can you wear the scarf and the cowboy hat? You can be an inner city cowboy.
The scarf might be coming out of retirement for Everest days. So, yeah, I don't mind that. Inner city cowboy, that'll be the closest I get.
Well, rightio, Bjorn. Look, we want to thank you so much for your time today, and best of luck for the rest of the spring. You can go look after your 40 or 92 or however many horses it is there. I'm gonna go
boutique stable. Look, we'll regard it as that.
Boutique stable. That's what we want. And we've got a lot of staff per horse with our 15 in work.
Yeah, I can imagine. A lot of walker space as well.
Yep, always get a good walk.
Yeah, and we'll be looking for those famous colours, the blue and yellow of Sweden. Obviously, your mother's Swedish and you love that heritage, and they are famous colours. We wish you all the best, Bjorn. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.